Okay, when it comes to editing a podcast, whether it's a video or an audio, we have four category of files, and I will explain why it is in four categories. So usually you'd have what was recorded, and you have the final copy. That is to the one who has recorded the podcast. So if I am a podcaster, there are two files I recognize, which is the unedited and the edited. But for you as a podcast editor, you have four categories, and I will explain these four categories. You have the unedited, you have the edited, which is the usual two, but you have in between, you have the original and the background track. And I will explain how these are different and why they are important. So first of all, you do have the original. So the original is on edited, but it's in its raw file. That's what it is. And then you have unedited. Now for unedited, there are reasons why you have the unedited category. So for example, let's say a podcast was recorded in a format that you do not want to use for editing. So for example, a podcast was sort of recorded, let's say in MP4, you understand, but you do not need the MP4. What you actually need is the MP3, because you are not editing a video podcast. And so that means that you have to leave the MP4 in the original category, and then convert that MP4 to MP3, and then take it to the unedited category. So what that means is that yes, basically the unedited and the original are the same, but a format has changed. Or sometimes even in audio, someone may send a voice note as a podcast to be shared, and the voice note it's in a format called .ogg. So .ogg is a format that is usually used on voice note, whether it's Telegram or WhatsApp. Now .ogg doesn't really work in all editing platforms. Sometimes Premiere Pro doesn't even allow .ogg, as I'm not sure of all versions. But now, if I would want to edit a .ogg file, I have to convert. So when I convert to .mp3, which is a format that Premiere Pro can use. So .ogg is its audio file, .mp3 is audio file, but Premiere Pro doesn't really read .ogg. So you have to convert to .mp3. There are other podcast editing platforms that would allow that. Now, once you have done that, that means that you put the .mp3 in unedited and leave the .ogg in original. The reason is, for you as a podcast editor, you want to keep track to ensure that no file is lost, so that in case the worst thing happens, you need the original file, you are able to access the original file. And then you have the edited. Now the edited category, it's when you've actually edited the unedited. You understand? So let's say, like I said, the .ogg was converted to MP3. Now the MP3 is now being edited on, let's say, software like Premiere Pro or Audition. And once it is edited, then it is now exported. So it will then fall into the edited category. And you have the fourth category, which is background track. Now, podcasts can usually have background soundtracks. So you can check, for example, if you go to tawazv.org, that is TAWASV.org. When you play the podcast, you see that there is a background track while the speaker is speaking. So usually background tracks are used to actually engage the listener. So it's a kind of psychology which I haven't understood, but many persons tell me that sometimes what even keeps them engaged in a podcast, it's actually the soundtrack, because it creates a kind of environment to keep you focused. And it's the reason why we do have soundtracks as to help you keep focus at work. Just play soundtracks to keep your focus at work. So these are the four categories. And now on a system, as you can see on my system, I have the four categories as a folder. So I created these four folders for the files to be in. So when I open original, these are the files that I have. These are the original files. So these are examples. So you can see that from the original file, an audio was sent in .ogg. I had to convert it to .mp3, but I left both here because it's original, you understand. But usually what happens is that the unedited, what I want to work with, it ought not to be here if I have converted. So let me tell you what I mean. Now if I go to unedited, these are the files I haven't edited. If I go to original, these are all the files. You understand? All the files. And what this helps to do, it actually helps to, I would say, help me organize. So by the time I open original, these are all the files plus the ones that have been converted. That's it. Then if I open the unedited, these are the ones I want to edit. So what that means is that any file that ought to be here is the file I want to use, I want to edit. So currently, I have the original files, and these original files, what I want to do is copy which one I would want to work with on the go. You understand? And when I'm done working, I delete it from the unedited. And why is that important? Now, I have worked on an original, and in the original, you see that I have worked on some edited. These are the edited: Dina, Grace, Lola, Noah. And if I go to unedited, I can't find Dina, Grace, Noah. The reason why is that I have edited them, and to not cause conflict on what I haven't edited or what I have edited, any work that I have edited will not be here at all. And it helps to keep organized. So for example, now maybe I forget about this in 2 months later and I do not know where I stop. But once I open the unedited, I know that okay, this is where I actually stopped. You understand? But if I now go to the original, I have all the files here. So I know that okay, every file is here, even the ones I have edited. So I can always refer back to them. That's it. And the edited here are the ones that have been edited. So I know that anyone here is ready to be published. And here I have the background track. So it depends on the podcast you are editing. Some podcasts may require you to have more than one soundtrack, or you could have multiple soundtracks for different particular podcasts. That works. Or you could have one, but it's also good to put it inside a folder. So this is how it is arranged as a podcast editor. Like I said, original, unedited, edited, background track. So in case you do not understand, I'll just quickly recap. So original, which is the first, is the file unedited in its raw format. And the unedited here is the file that has not been edited. That is it. And so the difference is that in original, all the formats are here, whether it's the raw format, but in unedited, it could be a format that I want to edit with, you understand? But another important part is that this original has all the files, none is deleted. But this unedited has only the files that are unedited. Any files that has been edited, it has been removed. Yes. And edited are the files only that have been edited, ready to be published. That is what it is. And the background soundtrack is the soundtrack we add behind the podcast to keep on the engagement. So this is the step of folder arrangement or file categories when it comes to podcast editing. So even though you just have one podcast, you can do it this way. Yes, one podcast means that when you are done editing, there will be no file here at all. That's fine. But once you go to original, you would have the file. It's okay. It helps you to keep organized. So if you keep on editing several podcasts, it will help you to always stay organized. So whether it's one you're editing, try to create this and it will help. So for example, in my system, I created podcast IMA. IMA is Interministry Africa. So I know that IMA, these are the files that I am editing in IMA. So if you have another organization you'd want to edit, you can create a folder too for them. And once you create that folder, you then list these other folders, which are also called file categories. So this is it, and I hope it's clear. If it's not clear enough, you can always ask your question and I'll do what to answer. Yes. So let's go to the next step of working on these files.